Hello and welcome to our webinar, How to Build a Best-in-Class Loyalty Program. We're going to allow a few more minutes for people to join and then we'll get started. For those of you who just joined, hello and welcome to our webinar, How to Build a Best-in-Class Loyalty Program. We're just waiting a few more minutes and then we're going to let a few more people join and then we'll get going. All right, I still see a few folks still joining, so we're just going to give it a couple more minutes and then we'll get going here. Okay, let's get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, How to Build a Best-in-Class Loyalty Program. My name is Jon Siegal. I'm Senior Vice President of Global Loyalty Sales here at Cheetah Digital. Let me share a little bit of background information on myself, and then I'll introduce my co-host for today. I am part of the team here at Cheetah Digital that built our loyalty solution and the underlying data platform that supports it. The group of us actually worked together back in the late 90s, the group that built the loyalty solution here at Cheetah Digital. We worked together in the late 90s at CRM software company Siebel Systems, where we were the early employees. And if you're not familiar with Siebel Systems, Siebel actually created what people today call the CRM software category. While we were at Siebel Systems, we built a product called Siebel Loyalty, which went on to power the loyalty programs for brands like Starbucks and American Airlines and Southwest Airlines and a number of others. So in my case and as a team, we've had a lot of experience over the years in CRM and in loyalty. And so I'm excited today to share with you some of the things that I've seen and learned over the years as part of today's topic, how to build a best-in-class loyalty program. I'm also excited to have with me today Jodi Rausch, who is Director of Integrated Loyalty Solutions at PK. Jodi, please share a little bit about yourself with the audience.
Great, thanks, John. Hi, good afternoon to my fellow East Coasters, and good morning to everyone else. Jodi Rausch, as John mentioned, I'm the Director of Integrated Loyalty Solutions here at PK. PK, some of you may know us better as formerly as Lenati. We rebranded earlier this year, and I've been in one aspect or another involved in loyalty, customer experience, customer engagement, or customer management my entire career, and it's something that I'm quite passionate about. I'm very excited to be chatting with you guys today about what makes the best-in-class loyalty program, and share a little bit of what our philosophy at PK is and what we share with our clients.
Excellent, thanks, Jodi. And yes, my first experience with your Okay, sorry, we had some technical difficulty there. Somehow I was muted. Hopefully the GoToWebinar gods will be kinder to me here in the next few minutes. What I was sharing was, Jodi, my initial experience actually with Lenati was about 4 years ago, where I met, it was Chris Klein, who was the CEO at the time, and Clay Walton House, who runs the loyalty practice. And I'd heard great things about them and was very impressed when I met them. Actually, when I realized I was meeting someone whose name was Clay Walton House, people who use 3 names have to be smart, I guess. And so uh, just very
In this
talented
case,
guys.
very appropriate. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Who uses 3 names except for smart people? Um, and then we worked on some projects together, and the clients loved the Lenati and now PK team. So was very excited when you were able to join us as part of today's session. A little housekeeping before we go through the actual agenda. Uh, if you have questions during the session, you can enter them into the GoToWebinar question section, and we'll do our best at the end to answer as many questions as we can. If for some reason we don't get to your question, we'll try and respond, do our best to respond via email after the event. And then we also have a short survey that we're going to be sharing at the end, and we'd really appreciate it if you could answer the couple questions and respond before you log on and continue with your day. So that's enough housekeeping. And here is the agenda for our session today. So the idea or the focus of today is how to build a best-in-class loyalty program. And we're really going to focus on answering 3 questions. The first one is, what does a best-in-class loyalty program look like? And we're going to then, after we have that discussion, we're then going to drill into, if you have an existing program, how can you look at your existing program? What are some of the questions you can ask yourself and others to understand how is your program achieved relative to your expectations? And if it hasn't met your expectations, what are potential root causes that you can try and explore and understand to really get it to where you want it to be? And then the last topic we're going to touch on is, if at the end of asking yourself those questions, you've decided, wow, we have to do something, we really have to take some action, what are some specific things you can go do to help drive change and help get you to the place where you want to be with your existing loyalty program? And then, of course, at the end, as we mentioned, ideally we'll have some time for Q&A to answer whatever questions you all may have submitted during the session. So with that, our first topic is, what does a best-in-class loyalty program look like? Jodi, please, share with the audience here your thoughts and helping us understand, this first topic.
Great. Thanks, John. So I think the key before we get too far into this topic is understanding that there is no one single answer. There's not a silver bullet for what the best-in-class loyalty programs look like, but we do find that there are very common characteristics across the best programs that we see out there and those that are the most successful in driving customer loyalty and achieving the objectives that they have set out to achieve. So I think the main key and thus the picture that we're sharing with you here is that you don't want to be a cookie cutter program. And one thing that I love to talk to clients about is when we start out, put your hand over your logo and read the description of your program, look at the list of benefits that you have, and tell me, can you tell who that program belongs to? Can you tell that it is for a specific brand or a specific industry? If it looks like it could be a program anywhere, anyhow, and it looks like everybody else's program, then this is the webinar for you for sure. So as we start looking at how to build a best-in-class program as well, we want to think about it from 2 perspectives. The first is from the member perspective, and then the second, which we'll get to in a moment, is really much more of the internal, the organizational perspective. So not to boil it down to too simple of a list of items, but really starting from the beginning, keep it simple, stupid cannot be overstressed in this situation. So it needs to be easy to join. It needs to be easy to understand, and it needs to be easy to participate. If it takes an advanced math degree to figure out how I'm earning points and how I redeem points and what I get for all of it, then there's probably a little bit too much complexity. How do we boil it down so that someone can look at it and know exactly, I'm going to get value from this, here's how I'm going to get value from this, and I want to play. The second is the strong value proposition. So making sure that there is a compelling reason, not just to join, but then to continue to participate in the program. The number of inactive memberships goes up every year. So people have joined and then they have either disengaged from the brand or they just don't find a compelling reason to continue to engage. This is not only engaging during kind of that shopping journey when I am in the brand, or a travel journey when I am flying on my airline. It's how am I engaging outside of that typical member journey so that I want to go and engage with you outside of the regular touch points. I think too, right here is where we start looking at the difference between incenting behavioral loyalty and incenting and encouraging emotional loyalty. So how do we compare the two, and how do we make sure that we're driving both, which will make us much more successful as a brand and as a program? The third thing is the relevancy, and I think it's relevancy over time. This is not, and I think John will probably stress this later as well, it's something that we all talk about. You can't set it and forget it. Loyalty is an ongoing, evolving program. It's so important to continue to make it different, keep it fresh, keep it exciting for your members so that they don't just think, oh, it's the same thing. You know, I've checked the box. I've already signed up for email and gotten my bonus points there. I've already referred a friend and gotten bonus points there, and all that's left is shopping. How do I continue to keep them engaged and want to come back to the brand, not only to be a frequent customer, a high spending customer, but how do I make them an advocate and a fan of the brand so that they'll go out and tell everyone else as well? Highly engaging. We have to start providing, and I think some brands do this very well, providing value beyond rewards and discounts. There's so much more that we can offer members outside of monetary rewards. That's everything from exclusive products, access to new information, access to products, or specific products that are member only. Looking at added services, looking at utility. What is gated behind loyalty and what is not? The fifth thing, I think that's the fifth bullet, is making the member feel that they're valued and part of the brand. So this really gets into the personalization side of things, and how are we using the data that they have given to us? How are we recognizing them? And let's tie that into the last bullet. How are we recognizing them throughout their member journey in every channel at every touch point so that they know that we are paying attention to them, we're acting accordingly, and we're meeting them in the true moments that matter? So if we all step back, and I'll give you just a moment to think about this, take an honest look at your program if you have an existing program. Take an honest look, and how do you measure up? Are you fulfilling all of those 6 things? Are there opportunities for you to improve? Okay, that's all you get. We'll let you ponder that a little bit more later in the interest of time. But then let's now shift and start looking a little more introspectively. So from a brand perspective, and this design and delivery that ties really back to that market-facing program that we just talked about, is what you're delivering and the program that you've designed, is it based on customer data and insights? Or is it based on, well, we can afford about a 3% return, so we'll give a 3% spend and get reward, and maybe we'll tack on free shipping for our best customers? I mean, that's great. Love the benefits, but there's so much more that we can do and deliver if we use customer data to understand what are people looking for, how are we going to shift their behavior, and what will shift their behavior. And then the second bullet really kind of builds on that. If we are collecting data from our members, we've got, well, we should be collecting data from our members, but we also have to use that data. And I think that is something that a lot of brands are struggling to do. And we work with a number of clients that embrace and use progressive profiling in really smart ways to help them create a much more bespoke and curated experience by knowing more about their customer than just, hey, Bob buys pants 4 times a year and this is the style that he likes. That's great, but do we know what Bob is buying for? Do we know the occasion that he's buying for? Do we know that he's buying for himself? Some of these are questions that can be answered a lot easier in zero-party data, and that's something that we should be embracing. Again, going back to the omni-channel experience, if you only deliver loyalty through the website and that's where most people see their loyalty experience, you're missing opportunities in the mobile section and then also in store. Reflecting and embracing the brand. I don't think that needs a whole lot of explanation, but there's constant opportunity for you to make sure that your brand is being reflected in the program. Driving desired behavior modifications, we talked about that with the customer data and insights. Encouraging employees to be ambassadors for the program, and I know John's going to speak to this a little bit more as well, but there is so much opportunity to empower your employees to be the voice of the program, to allow them to recognize best customers. We'll talk about that in a couple of our industry examples later as well. And then lastly, the flexibility to quickly change and adapt. This goes back to the fact that loyalty programs have to be ever evolving. We need to be adaptable and flexible enough to change when we know that customer expectations are changing, member expectations are changing, and market conditions are changing. So lastly, from kind of the internal integration and support side, I think best-in-class programs, if you really look at who's doing it well, there is internal alignment, and this starts at the very top of the organization of what the key objectives for loyalty are. What are you trying to drive? What are you trying to achieve? When it comes down to it, if the marketing organization or whoever owns loyalty, if they're the only ones who are bought in on this, you're going to have a much harder time being as successful as you want to be. It needs to be pervasive throughout the organization. And that ties into the third point. It needs to also be integrated through the organization. Loyalty has to be more than a communication tool. It needs to be part of store operations. It needs to be part of product design and innovation. It should be part of the analytics team. Everyone should keep loyalty in mind at some point of their department or their functional area. We talked about supporting the business and the brand strategy. I think too, loyalty is too often forgotten. When you think about every year we come up with new corporate initiatives, what are we really trying to achieve as a business? How can loyalty support those initiatives? So for example, if you're a retailer and this year the big push is men's products, how do you use loyalty to help achieve that corporate initiative? And then lastly, again, you're gonna probably hear it a little bit repeated today, is this flexibility to quickly change and adapt. So as we think about examples, I know this one is near and dear to both John and myself, is Vans Family. And Vans Family, one of the things that I really love about this program is that they really embrace customer engagement. They have a points economy, and you can earn points, but you earn points through different activities. Every time I log on to my dashboard in Vans Family, there's a new poll for me to take. There's a new song for me to listen to. There's a new video for me to watch. There are different things to do. It's very engaging. It's very compelling. And then when I go to redeem my points, I redeem them for exclusive products, branded products that are Vans products that are for me and that make me feel like I am getting something that no one else can get. So that's my Vans. John, do you want to add kind of your favorite parts of Vans?
Absolutely. I mean, I think you mentioned something earlier, the idea that if you read a description of the program and you covered up the logo of the brand, does it look like everybody else's? And I think that's a challenge with a lot of people's programs today, is they look and feel like everyone else's. And what I love about Vans Family is it screams Vans, everything about it. And what they've done what they've done a great job of doing is taking the values of the brand, and the program lives and breathes those values. And so everything from the edginess and the fun way you sign up, to the different ways they engage, to the reward opportunities, it feels like a natural extension of Vans and the Vans brand, and looks like nobody else's program. And the whole idea of a loyalty program, or one of the main ideas, is to help you achieve a competitive advantage in acquiring and retaining customers. And so to do that, you have to stand out from the crowd. And I can't think of a program that does a better job of standing out from the crowd than Vans Family.
I agree. It's a good one and a favorite. So then the next industry example that we wanted to share, at least this is my industry favorite. I know John has a different industry favorite, and when it boils down to it, if you're a frequent traveler, we all have differing opinions based on the airline that we are most loyal to or that we fly the most. I'm an Atlanta girl. I am a Delta diehard, and I love the program that they have built for SkyMiles. There are a number of things that I love about it, but I think as a marketer and as a loyalty strategist, what I love most is I'm earning miles. I get that. You know what? That is so, it's not only secondary, it's tertiary, and maybe even further down the list is the actual miles that I'm earning. It is all about status. It's all about the different services that I get, and the experience that I get as a platinum member when I fly. So it's everything from access to the Sky Club, early boarding, discounts on my Clear membership, which Delta has actually invested in. So that's another way that they're helping improve the customer experience. But I love the way that they have empowered their employees. So anyone who wears the Delta uniform has been empowered to make the experience better for their customers. And what they've done specifically for members is they have given data to all of the flight attendants on a handheld device. They know who is in what seat, what their status is. I have had countless occasions, and I'm always startled when this happens. It doesn't matter what class I'm flying, that whoever comes and it's time for the beverage service, Miss Rausch, what can I get you to drink today? And it always startles me that they know my name. And the first time I thought it was a little creepy. And after that, I was like, you know what? They're using my data and they're empowering their employees and they're making my experience so much more curated and personalized than I'm just another person back in the cattle car that they're pouring a Diet Coke into a little plastic cup for. This is where you can really differentiate yourself too. And John, I know you have a different favorite airline, and
I
that is
I have my own
absolutely
airline
fine.
story. First of all, let me say I love this picture. And
Hmm.
I love this picture because I the airline I fly most often is American Airlines. I'm an executive platinum. Before COVID-19, I flew quite a bit and hope to do so again in the future.
Amen to
Um,
that.
but the reason why I love this picture is because when I fly Delta, my seat is typically about 10 rows behind where this picture is taken from. And and what this tells me is, one of the motivators for me around my affiliation or loyalty to American Airlines is I know when I book a seat, I'm more likely to be sitting in a place that I would rather be sitting, which is closer to the front, so I can get off the plane quickly and don't have to wait, so long. And so I think there's been a lot of work that's been done around, behavioral studies around what's more powerful in terms of motivating people. Is it a discount or is it the experience? And everything I've seen, and from my own, personal observations, the experience, the customer experience is far more motivating and powerful. People love getting a deal or a discount, but it's that experience in the moment that I would argue is more powerful in motivating people to make a decision. And so for me, I will choose American Airlines whenever I can because I know my flight experience is going to be better. I'll get a better, excuse me, better seat, board early, et cetera. The other thing that I wanted to share, which I thought was, I'd never had this happen before with either an airline or I can't even think any other company or brand I do business with, but around, I want to say it was early April, I got a call. At first I thought it was maybe a scam, but it turned out it wasn't. It was the executive platinum team from American Airlines calling me, and they just wanted to say, hey, John, how are you doing? And we know you're not flying because nobody's flying, but we wanted to see, how are things going? Is your family safe and healthy? And what are your attitudes about, when you think you're going to fly again? Are you, concerned that you wouldn't fly if your company let you, fly, et cetera, et cetera. And I spoke to a person, it must have been about a 10, 15-minute conversation. And it was the kind of personal connection that I think we so rarely have in today's world where so much is done online. And, we used to check in with people, right? Years ago. Now you don't even do that
Right.
when you check in at the airport. So the impact to me was, here's a brand that went out of its way to reach out to me to establish a human connection, just reinforced the whole idea of the experience and the brand more positively in my mind. And I think these are things that best in class programs, the brands do, is they
Yep.
try and make it more of than just an automated system. It's about how can we create a better customer experience and elevate our perception of the brand. And that's been my experience with, most recently with American Airlines and over the duration of the relationship.
I totally agree. I was reading a study recently, and I don't remember which study it was, but it was that customer satisfaction or member satisfaction was driven 75% or a little above that from the experience, and 25% or around there from the actual rewards. And I think that's a big shift that we've seen over the last, I don't know, 5, 10, 15 years, is that it's moving much more service oriented, service based design, much more about the experience than it is about the rewards than it's ever been.
So that's another question I wanted to ask you, which is, if I'd asked you the question, say, a year ago or 2 years ago, what does a best-in-class loyalty program look like? And then I asked you that question today, has anything changed? What's changed
Oh,
over that
sure.
period?
I mean, I think if you think back, it was just over 10 years ago that the iPhone was unveiled. And you think about where mobile has come in so quickly. I think that when you start looking at how loyalty has evolved, you can't ignore the massive changes that we've had in technology. And that's everything from everyone is now offering recommendations, product recommendations based on what I've bought before. And that was brought to us by Amazon initially. That really drove everyone else starting to get into the recommendation engines. Mobile devices, and how do you engage on a mobile device? This realization that you just can't have a mobile enabled website, you need to have an app. You're going to have people are much happier when they're engaging with you on an app. Virtual reality, all of these different technology sides, but then also, as I just mentioned, this shift from I'm in it for the discount, I'm in it for the green stamps and for the mile. If you think way back to the beginning of modern loyalty, when we were all collecting green stamps, which does date me, I admit.
You lost probably
But
two-thirds
really,
of our listeners with that one, but that's cool. Keep going.
okay, good. But where has it come? It's we still want the. I mean, let's be perfectly honest. We all still want the rewards. We want the discounts. We want to get the deal. But I'm willing to give that up if the experience isn't great and go find someone where I can get both. And I think that
Yeah.
that has been a big shift. It's bringing in that emotional loyalty side and not just the behavioral loyalty side.
Yeah. I'll add to that and say that I think there were a lot of programs that were implemented over the years where people felt they needed to implement they needed a loyalty program. Just like
Yeah.
people, whatever the need was of the day, right? We need to do
Hmm.
this. And I feel like a lot of brands rushed to do it and not sure exactly how or why. Maybe it was just, it wasn't carefully considered, or they just wanted to get the program stood up and running and they checked the box and they did it, but they weren't thinking about it as an ongoing, living, breathing, evolving
Right.
part of the business. And so they put something in place, and then, very quickly, because consumers' tastes change and the market changes and competition changes, someone comes out with something better, they're all of a sudden realizing their program is out of date or not
Right.
keeping up with others. And so I feel like, the other idea that I think has changed in terms of what's best in class is the ability to continuously improve and respond and expand the capabilities of what the program does. I don't think people were thinking about that years back. At least the programs certainly that were implemented don't feel that way.
I agree. Totally agree. I think
Okay.
one of the challenges is, and it's maybe not the most popular opinion on a webinar that's about best in class loyalty, but to me, loyalty marketing isn't its own thing. Loyalty marketing is marketing. There is no marketing that should exist that isn't trying to engender loyalty from somebody. So we kind of call it out as loyalty marketing, and Maybe that's a way to differentiate it from like digital marketing, but in essence, marketing is loyalty marketing, and that's something that I think more brands need to embrace.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so let's push forward here. So we just
Yes.
talked a little bit about what a best-in-class program looks like. What are the qualities of those programs? Let's now take a turn inward and look at if you have an existing program, what can you ask yourself, and how can you look at your current program relative to what's best in class? And if there are some concerns or issues, maybe we can start getting into what some of the root causes of those concerns and issues. And I want to start actually with an example, another brand example. When I am meeting with people and talking about loyalty, very often I'll ask the question, what's your favorite loyalty program as a consumer? And we get lots of answers. People say lots of different things, but probably the one that's most frequently stated as their favorite loyalty program is the Starbucks loyalty program. And when I talk to brands who are actually in the restaurant business, whether they're a quick service restaurant or another format, very often they call out the Starbucks program as a model program of what they aspire to become. So I think it's important just to kind of continue in this idea of what best in class looks like, and use Starbucks program as sort of like a lighthouse example before we go into the details of being introspective. Earlier this year in their Q1 earnings announcement, Starbucks shared, and they do this quarterly, the status of their current program. And so the Starbucks rewards program, as of Q1, this is all pre-COVID-19, had 18.9 million active members, which was a 16% increase over the prior year. They also were able to attribute 1/3 of their comparable store growth to Starbucks rewards. And they went one step further, and their CEO said this quote, "We know from experience that when customers join our rewards program, their total spend with Starbucks increases meaningfully." So clearly, they're doing something right at Starbucks. And I think if you're a frequent coffee drinker and go to Starbucks, the customer experience, they really led the way in many ways in that experience of how easy it is to identify yourself and pay. But the program itself continues to evolve. They just made some changes recently as well, to give new options for people to pay. And so I think it's a great example of a brand who's innovating, and the program is achieved great levels of success. When you look at something like that and then you compare it to how your program is performing, the question then becomes, well, how do I compare? I mean, obviously, if you have an existing program, you could be in a different industry, you could be in a different segment of restaurant if you're in the restaurant industry. So these are some questions that we think are good to start thinking about to help orient yourself around how are you doing. And one of the first questions that I suggest you look at is, if you go back to whenever your program was started, and that could be a few years, it could be much further back, what were the original metrics for success? I think often we do things, we implement a program or a project, and you have a set of goals, and then you sort of get caught up in whatever's happening at that point in time in the business, or people change. You're not the person who created the program, you inherited it from somebody else. And so sometimes these original metrics aren't the focus anymore. So what were the original metrics for success? One of the second questions I'd ask is, do they still make sense given what's going on in the world today in the business? And if those metrics do make sense, how have you performed against those? I mean, that's obviously a clear measurement to say, if our expectation was around member growth or percentage of total transactions associated with our loyalty program, or one of any number of other metrics that people typically use, how have you performed against those? And if you're not meeting expectations, then you start thinking about, well, what is the root cause of not meeting those expectations? Another, I think, very important question that is often neglected is, what do the current members think? I mean, it's great for us to sit, in corporate headquarters and have opinions, but obviously what's very important is, what do the members think themselves? And so to the extent you have done or not done some form of member research to understand how they view the program and what they like and don't like about it. This is another important data point that we'll come back to a little bit later. That's absolutely critical to assess how is the program working.
And John, real quick, sorry to interrupt because
No, please.
you're on a groove, but something that you mentioned there at the beginning really reminds me of that old mantra that you manage what you measure. And if you're measuring the wrong thing, you're managing the wrong thing. So I love that point that you bring up about making sure that the metrics still are relevant, and if they're not, how do you need to change them?
Yeah,
Love it.
exactly. Thank you, Jodi. So very often we find, people are underwhelmed when they look at how their program is currently, meeting expectations. There tends to be, when we're talking to folks who are potential new clients, something that's dissatisfying them with their current program. And over the years, we've seen a range of causes for what drives a program to underachieve. And we've categorized them here into 5 different areas. We'll drill into each of them in some detail, and I'll share some examples of things that we've seen that I would characterize as, reasons why these programs haven't achieved their full potential. And it ranges from, the original strategy and design, or the current strategy and design. There are potential or likely issues. The underlying technology may have issues. We'll talk about those. The service level they're getting from their partners, may be a root cause of some problems. Often the perception of the value of the solution they've implemented can be a contributor to why a program is believed to be underachieving. And then actually the stability of the solution provider that's supporting the program is another area that we've seen that has been a root cause of a program to underachieve. And we'll drill into each of these. And what we've seen is it could be one or any combination of these items become the reasons why the program is not meeting or exceeding its expectations. So let's start with program strategy and design issues. And Jodi, you talked about a number of these things, but I'm gonna kind of flip it around and actually give some specific examples of things that we've seen. Obviously, the key to any successful program is having the right strategy and design, but not just doing it once, having the right strategy and design over time as the world changes, as your market changes, as competitors change. And very often we find programs that have one or more of these issues that contribute to poor performance. The first one being the value proposition of the program itself. So I'm sure we've all seen, whether we're on a website and someone's inviting us to join their program, or you're in a retail store and someone's inviting you to join the program and they tell you, here's the reason why you should join. And so the question is the reason to join compelling enough that you're gonna spend the time to do it, and in return, share information about yourself? And very often the reason to join is compelling, sometimes it's not. If it's just about getting a discount, I would argue that's not compelling enough. But we've also seen situations where the reason to join is really compelling, but there's not much after that. In fact, I have a client example where the reason to join was great and people were joining and they were seeing lots of growth. But once they joined, there was really no value proposition to continue to engage thereafter. And so the challenge that client shared with us was, yeah, we're getting email addresses and we're getting people to identify themselves one time, but then they never identify themselves, or rarely identify themselves subsequently. So we're really not learning anything about them over time. We don't have the information we need to motivate them over time. And we don't have the ability to then use that to create a better experience. And so the value proposition absolutely needs to be rock solid, both to sign up and to continue to participate. The next one we've seen, I think you can all think of this as consumers, how do you take the friction out of joining the program? And I see on a daily basis, there are programs that the brand has not taken the time to really think of a easy consumer experience to get people to join. In fact, one client that I'll share an example with, this is a restaurant client, most of their business happens in their physical restaurants, yet that was the only place you couldn't join the program. So you had to join on the website, you had to join through a mobile app. And if you have virtually all of your customers coming through your physical place, granted, you don't want to slow the lines down in your restaurant in this particular example, but there's ways to get people to join in the restaurant in this example that's actually easy, and they were missing a huge opportunity. So wherever your program lives and breathes, making it as easy as possible for people to join, absolutely critical to driving adoption and getting people in the program to begin with. Jodi, you talked about the next one earlier, this idea of the program being more than just about the transaction. So clearly want to have more of an experience around the life cycle of the relationship. It's not just about when I purchase things, especially for brands where you may only buy 3 to 5 times a year. You're missing out on all the time in between. We see program and strategy and design issues around how behavior is rewarded. And there's a lot of programs that are essentially rewarding people for behavior they would otherwise ordinarily do. So having a program where you can identify unique categories or groups or cohorts of your customers and come up with what motivates them and make it about incremental behavior is another important example to focus on. And if you're just motivating everybody to do the same thing and it's rewarding existing behavior, you're not going to see results. We talked about this next one as it relates to vans, but I think as a society, we see ourselves as unique individuals, whether we're not unique at all or not, but it doesn't matter. I think we see ourselves as unique individuals, and we want to be treated as such. And the program needs to be unique from brand to brand, but it also should treat its members as unique individuals. And this kind of gets back to the bullet before here about rewarding people for what you know about them specifically, and not just rewarding everybody for the same thing, but recognizing uniqueness and having a program that acts accordingly will drive substantially better results than ones that treat everybody the same. Vans, great example of this next bullet, reflecting the brand values. And so if your program does not reflect the values of your brand, going back to the drawing board and figuring out how you do that is absolutely key. And then this last one, I probably think this may be one of the most important things, is these are not set it and forget it kinds of initiatives. You have to have an environment where whatever your strategy and design was day one, you can continuously learn and pivot and adjust, because that's what's going on in the marketplace. And your program needs to be able to constantly evolve. And if it can't, or you don't, no surprise that your program is underachieving. The next area of issues that we've seen that you probably, if you think about your current program, maybe you've seen some of these relate to the technology themselves. We had a client that we were working with who their current provider, every day at certain days of the week, had, outages, or they couldn't handle the peak in demand on the system. That creates a terrible member experience. Another client, because frequently in a loyalty initiative, there's lots of customer data in lots of places, and the systems need to integrate with lots of different things. They were seeing that their loyalty system and their other systems were getting out of sync, and so they had data integrity issues, which, as you can imagine, can create all kinds of problems in how you evaluate the success of the program, as well as perhaps member data is not consistent from channel to channel, or in a sufficient way to have the program behave consistently. Poor performance of how mobile apps work, or the experience in a store. If the system is slow, that slow member experience, we're all impatient consumers, and that people tend to not tolerate that. And then the system itself, if you need to continually evolve and change, if the system's inflexible, that creates a barrier to maintaining a best-in-class or building a best-in-class program. We've seen lots of issues around service quality, and so this is another area that I would think everyone should go look at in their existing program. If your goal is to build a best-in-class loyalty program, and you need to constantly evolve and change and move at a fast pace, do you have the partners around you who can also move at that same pace? Do they bring the domain expertise to the relationship? We've seen situations where that isn't always the case. Do they have someone who's responsible for understanding your business and coordinating their resources? If they don't, how can they keep up with you? And in some cases, we've seen situations where the phone's just not getting answered, or the emails are not getting responded to. Tough to move fast and be nimble if your partners are not. And then I think the other item on this slide is you have established metrics of success. Hopefully, when you set out to do your program, are your partners aligned with those metrics? If they're about growth, if they're about transaction share, if they're about driving incremental behavior in certain segments, is everyone aligned and focused on those same key metrics of success? If they're not, then that also becomes potentially a barrier for you achieving your results. I'd mentioned at the beginning of this section this idea that sometimes the perception of the value of a solution can be an impediment to it becoming best in class. Very often we see, for one of a number of reasons, whether they're true or not, that there's a perception in an organization that the program is just not delivering the results or delivering the value. And it could be driven by, perhaps a high cost to manage and run a program with, at the same time, a perception of not receiving high enough returns. Maybe we're just giving everyone the same discounts and we're spending a lot of money, and the perception from the finance people is that, why are we doing this, right? So the ability to be able to turn this around and show that the program actually is driving incremental behavior and returning a positive ROI is clearly a key factor in establishing a best-in-class program. Also, this idea of time to value. If everything takes many, many, many months and costs a lot of money to change, it's tough to keep a program evolving if you have a cost barrier to evolve on an ongoing basis. And then this last area is, and we've talked about this now a couple of times, which is, your partners who are supporting you in this journey of building a best-in-class loyalty program, need to be, stable and need to be aligned with you. And if you see any of these things happening, this becomes a problem. The light bulb may go off, and whether it's their staff turning over, or they're not innovating, or perhaps they were company A and now they're part of company B, who's doing all kinds of other things. These things can distract businesses, and there's little room for error, I think, in this space when it's so competitive for customers, and you need to build and evolve a world-class program. If you don't have the people around you who have the similar ability to execute, it becomes a much harder task. And so this is another thing that could be potentially a root cause of a program not achieving its desired results. So let's go to the third topic, which is you have an idea of what a best-in-class program looks like. You've looked at your own program, perhaps you've talked to customers, you've tried to explore what are the root causes of a program underachieving, and now you want to take some action and take the steps to actually drive change. So here's a few things that we would suggest you consider. And Jodi, I'm going to ask you to start off and maybe talk about the first couple here.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks, John. So I think one of the first things, and we talked about this at the beginning about what makes a best-in-class program, is this understanding of what your members want, what your members need, and what their expectations are. So certainly not to be considered just something that you do when things aren't maybe right, but something you should be doing all along, is really making sure that you're capturing member research. So customer insights work, making sure that you're capturing VOC wherever you can, and this could be post-purchase surveys, it could be polls on your site, it could be social media engagements, but how do we make sure that we know what a member's expectation is? At PK, we do a lot of focus groups and workshops with actual customers to get their input on what the member experience looks like, what they want, what compels them, what makes it interesting for them, and what makes them want to engage versus, yeah, that's fine, because that's fine isn't going to get you to best in class, and it's not necessarily going to get you the emotional loyalty that you're looking for, which certainly is much more compelling. And that ties in really tightly to the second item, which is really the competitive research. And I would encourage everyone to think of, when you think of competitive research, don't just think of your immediate sector competitors. So if I'm an apparel retailer, I should be looking outside of the apparel retail industry as well, because what my customer, what my member is experiencing is not just within apparel retail. Their experiences at Amazon have shifted their expectations of everyone else. Their experiences with, say, a DoorDash or Spotify, or you name any other kind of interaction, any other service has a, a direct impact on what they expect from all of the other brands that they engage with. So what does it look like from a mobile experience when they engage with other brands? What does it look like from an online perspective? What is it in store? And just really try to understand and embrace what a consumer is. And you know what? We're all consumers too. We're not just here in our bubble trying to imagine what our customers want and what they need. What I think it starts introspectively too. I think about what my expectations are from the brands that I engage with, and especially those that I am highly loyal to and very active in their loyalty programs. Or think about the loyalty programs that you yourself have disengaged from and why. And I think that that will start getting the wheels turning and your mind moving towards what are some of the things that I need to start exploring from a competitive and a member standpoint. And then
Excellent.
John, I'm going to let you take the next two.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. So this third one, I think we hear this term very often. It's a very broadly used term, personalization. I think people have been talking about it for a while. I think we're going to hear a lot more about it in the coming months and years as people really try and create more personalized experiences. But I think as it relates to loyalty, this idea of creating a program or environment that treats each member uniquely, and I think it really requires the brand to look at, how are you capturing and learning about your customers in any and every possible way. Customers have signals about themselves, data they share, data that's behavioral. And I think to really accomplish this goal, it's really an organizational initiative to understand, where is our customer and how are they signaling us in all kinds of ways, and how can we set up an environment to bring all that information together to enable the experience. And so, this, I think a lot of vendors make this sound simple. Oh, we've got a personalization, feature or personalization widget, but there's
Yeah.
really an organizational commitment to creating this kind of experience that I think needs to be thought about and involves many stakeholders in the business. And so you can't start this one early enough to really consider. But I'd say probably this last one I would suggest is one of the most important, which is to really revisit the strategy and success metrics that you've established for your program. We talked about this earlier about root causes. It's time to go back to the drawing board and look at the world today and look at your business, and having done the research with your customers and with your competitors, to come up with what is the new strategy that not only will sustain you in the coming months, but also one that will allow you to move and evolve at a very fast pace given what's going on in the marketplace. So this becomes a continuously living and breathing initiative. That's the only way I think you can get to become a best-in-class program, but also maintain your status as a best-in-class program and not become tired and out of sync with the realities of the marketplace. I think as you think about these things, as you think about perhaps your current solution provider, or any of the factors we talked today about, if your current provider is not up to the task, or if the current system's not up to the task, it's really important to begin now making a change or looking to improve these things. I think it's very easy for a lot of brands to continue with what they have and maintain the status quo. It's hard to change. It's hard to do new projects. It requires people and consensus and dollars and things. But I think, and Jodi, I'm interested actually in your opinion on this. I don't think people consider enough the cost of doing nothing or the cost of maintaining
Right.
the status quo. And I think if people actually went through a process of saying, what is the opportunity we're missing out on, that if we
Yeah.
stayed with what we have and with our current approach, and put a cost to that, I think they would realize, they have to change. What are your thoughts on that?
I totally agree. I think it goes back to the example that you brought up about Starbucks, and they talk about, how much more these members are spending and that it's measurable. If you think about, and maybe they're a really high bar and maybe we don't need to ask everyone to meet that high of a bar, but if you think about, most members are higher spenders, and most members who shop across channels are even higher spenders. if you're not meeting them in the moments that matter, if you're not delivering a program that engages them and makes them want to continue to not only engage with you, but also spend with you, you're leaving money on the table. And the more share of wallet that you can capture from them, obviously, is better for your business. Um, I am less likely to bring most of my share of wallet to a brand that does not compel me to engage with them emotionally. If it's just like, hey, this is where I usually get it, and I get rewards and so I get a discount, that's not what is driving me to make that repeat purchase there. If I am emotionally involved as well, if I feel valued, if I feel like there is something else that they're bringing to the table for me, and I am getting back from them what I am giving to them, then I am more likely to bring more of my share of wallet dollars to them. And that is the opportunity that we don't want to miss.
Absolutely, absolutely. Great. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
So we have a few minutes left to do some Q&A, and I see a few questions here. I'm going to start with one. If we don't get to your question, feel free, by the way, to submit it via the GoToWebinar question dialogue. If we don't get to it, we'll do our best to respond via email with answers. The first question, Jodi, I'd love for you to maybe touch on, and you talked about this a little bit throughout the time today, is this
Mm-hmm.
idea of emotional loyalty. Compared to behavioral loyalty. I mean, we've heard there's so much has been written about emotional loyalty, and I think Emily Collins at Forrester has really talked quite about this and written a lot about this. Could you
Right.
maybe share your perspective or with the group the difference between emotional and behavioral loyalty and why that matters?
Sure. So, kind of even going back to this last example, the behavioral loyalty is really driven by the value that I'm getting, this value exchange of I'm giving you information and I get something back from you. Um, as a consumer, I think about what is the easiest path to purchase. Um, the way that we can influence that behavioral loyalty is really it's product enhancements, it's experience design, it's what kind of offers and discounts. Yes, it's the monetary side of the world that really drives a lot of that behavioral loyalty. The emotional loyalty is much more of I hate to use the term, but it's a little more touchy feely. But it's how do I relate to you as a brand and as a program personally? Do we have shared values? Do I have social connectivity with you? What are my life goals, and do I feel like you as an organization are helping me achieve those goals? So in order to really drive and achieve that emotional loyalty, we're looking at things like recognizing someone for being a best customer, for being a member at all. How can I really make them feel like they have the exclusive in with the brand? How do I make them feel like they are part of the brand? Um, and I know it's sometimes overused, but surprise and delight can really go a long way in building that emotional loyalty. So hopefully that answers that question. And if not, please let me know, and I'm happy to expound further after the webinar.
Excellent. Thank you for that. I think we have time for one more question, and so I'm going to pick hopefully one that's a shorter answer so that we can get through it. And that is, look, we've got COVID-19, hopefully winding down, but is now a good time to make a change with all the uncertainty that's going on in the business, do you think?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, what do you think about that? That's
I,
the
I think
question
yes.
here.
I mean, I think yes. If your organization is in a position where you can make a change, I think you need to make a change. And if you're not in a position to make a change, chances are that's a sign that you do need to make a change. Um, Really to be able to react and pivot your brand, your program to really appeal to the customer and make sure that they realize that they still feel valued from you and it's not just about driving sales, I think is a big deal right now.
And I would just add to that, which is I think if there's one lesson that brands learned from this experience, it's that the brands who had the strongest connections with their customers during this difficult period were at a huge competitive advantage over those that didn't. And the best way to build those strong connections is through a best-in-class loyalty program. And so if you don't have a best-in-class loyalty program, it's imperative that you start and start now. And there's things that you can do to get started that even in today's environment that can help you eventually get to your goals and objectives. So I'm sure there's lots and lots we could talk about on that particular topic. Unfortunately, we are at the end of the hour. So I want to thank everyone who's joined us. When you log off or when you end today, if you could please, there's a short survey we'd ask you to complete. And thank you, everyone. Hopefully you felt this was a valuable hour of your day to learn about how to build a best-in-class loyalty solution and a loyalty program. And Jodi, thank you so much for all your time and your knowledge. It was great. And everyone have a great rest of your week.
Thanks for including me. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.